Hello, I'm gonna do the technology news. Technology news. Technology. How do we do this? AI technology. Oh, I haven't set it
Good
up.
morning. It's May 14th, and this is your daily brief in tech.
Oh,
Here's
go with the
everything you need to
bar.
know.
Boy.
A recent letter has sparked a significant conversation about the future of copyright laws in the UK, urging the government to take action to protect artists from the implications of artificial intelligence. The amendment, led by Biban Kidron, has gained notable support, passing with 272 votes in favor compared to 125 against. Among the prominent supporters of this initiative are music legends Elton John and Paul McCartney, who have added their voices to the growing concern regarding AI's impact on creative rights. Despite this backing, the government, led by Keir Starmer, has shown hesitance towards the amendment and is choosing to continue consultations rather than implementing immediate changes. The Department of Science, Innovation and Technology has stated that it will explore measures aimed at balancing the interests of creators with those of tech companies. However, some peers in the industry argue that immediate action is necessary to address the concerns raised by artists. Technology Secretary Peter Kyle is now examining a new licensing system for copyright holders and AI developers, shifting away from the previously proposed opt-out model. As the government reviews responses to its consultation on copyright law changes, it plans to release a report assessing the economic impact of these proposed changes. Yet, many artists remain skeptical, feeling that the government's proposed measures do not sufficiently address their concerns and are merely superficial solutions. The government argues that existing copyright laws may hinder growth in both the creative and tech sectors, indicating a need for reform through new legislation. Public interest in the intersection of copyright and AI is evident, with over 11,500 submissions received during the ongoing consultation. The proposed amendment includes transparency provisions, which would require rights holders to be informed about how their work is utilized by AI, an aspect that critics argue is crucial for fair practices. Failing to adequately address these issues could stifle innovation in the UK, with potential consequences for AI development and economic growth. Spotify has unveiled an enhanced AI DJ feature for its premium subscribers, allowing users to interact with the DJ using voice commands. This update, announced on May 13, 2025, aims to create a more engaging and personalized experience by enabling users to request specific genres or moods for their music. Users can now say things like, "indie tracks I've never heard before," or "electronic beats for a midday run," making the interaction more intuitive and user-friendly. This feature builds on Spotify's tradition of leveraging machine learning for personalized experiences, following the success of tools like Discovery Weekly. After 2 years of limited interactivity, this upgrade represents a significant improvement, showcasing Spotify's commitment to advancing its AI capabilities. The introduction of voice commands positions Spotify as a leader in personalized audio platforms, moving beyond traditional passive listening. Since its launch in 2023, the AI DJ has gained popularity, with listener engagement nearly doubling over the past year, partly due to its humorous commentary. Alongside the voice command feature, Spotify has introduced a 30-day snooze option, allowing users to temporarily limit songs they do not wish to hear again, further enhancing user control. Recent app updates also include improved playlist management tools and features for viewing premium plan prices, following a legal ruling in the Epic Games versus Apple case. Currently, the voice command feature is in beta and is limited to music requests, excluding non-music content like audiobooks or podcasts. Users are encouraged to update their Spotify app to access these new features, which are rolling out in over 60 countries. House Republicans have put forward a provision in the budget reconciliation bill that seeks to prohibit state and local governments from regulating artificial intelligence for the next decade. This measure specifically targets regulations on automated decision systems, which encompasses a variety of technologies, including AI. The proposed bill enforces a 10-year moratorium on state-level enforcement of AI laws and regulations, aimed at addressing concerns about inconsistent regulations across different states. Critics such as Brad Carson, president of the AI safety think tank Americans for Responsible Innovation, have labeled this provision as a dangerous concession to big tech. They warn that it could negatively impact the public and small businesses, limiting states' abilities to hold AI companies accountable for significant issues like algorithmic bias and the proliferation of deepfake child pornography. While the bill is scheduled for markup in the House, its prospects in the Senate remain uncertain, with detractors claiming it prioritizes corporate interests over the rights of human creators. If enacted, the bill could invalidate existing state laws, including New York's bias audit requirement for AI in hiring and California's transparency measures for generative AI in healthcare. Consumer advocates have raised alarms that restricting state regulations may endanger consumer protections, particularly in areas of privacy and transparency within AI applications. States such as California and New York have already begun implementing specific AI regulations, showcasing a trend towards increased state-level oversight of AI technologies. Representative Jay Obernolte has emphasized the urgency of establishing federal regulations before states adopt more comprehensive laws, advocating for a unified approach. Proponents of the bill argue that federal preemption of state AI regulations is essential for unlocking the full potential of AI across various sectors, including the economy and healthcare. Experts suggest that the Republican stance reflects a broader trend of Congress being influenced by big tech, raising concerns about a potential erosion of consumer protections. India is taking a significant step forward in the semiconductor industry with the announcement of its first 3-nanometer semiconductor chip designs. Union Minister for Electronics and Information Technology, Ashwini Vaishnaw, made this announcement during the inauguration of 2 advanced design facilities for Renesas Electronics India in Noida and Bengaluru on May 13, 2025. Renesas, a prominent Japanese semiconductor company, has established a new design center in Noida, marking the first occasion that advanced 3-nanometer chips will be designed within India. This move is seen as a critical development in enhancing India's semiconductor capabilities, aiming to bolster its position in the global tech landscape while promoting self-sufficiency in technology. To support this initiative, the Indian government plans to provide hardware kits to 270 academic institutions, enhancing practical learning and fostering a skilled workforce. These institutions will receive advanced EDA software tools alongside hardware kits, ensuring the preparation of industry-ready engineers. In addition, Renesas has signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology to supply microcontroller-based hardware kits to these institutions, encouraging innovation among students and startups. Vaishnaw outlined a comprehensive semiconductor strategy that includes design, fabrication, and supply chains for essential equipment. This announcement reflects India's ambition to reduce its reliance on foreign chip manufacturers and establish itself as a significant player in the global semiconductor market. The anticipated 3-nanometer chips are expected to enhance performance, energy efficiency, and miniaturization for next-generation technologies, including mobile devices, AI systems, and 5G infrastructure. The growing demand for semiconductors across various sectors, such as smartphones, medical equipment, and automobiles, underscores the importance of these advancements. Vaishnaw expressed gratitude to Prime Minister Narendra Modi for prioritizing semiconductors under the Atmanirbhar Bharat vision, which aims for self-reliance in critical technologies. Jamie Lee Curtis has taken a stand against the unauthorized use of her likeness in a deepfake advertisement featuring her image. The ad, which included fabricated quotes in an interview context, raised significant concerns about the impact of such content on her reputation and brand integrity. After Curtis made a public plea on Instagram, which received over 55,000 likes, the ad was removed within an hour, thanks to swift action from Meta, who confirmed the violation of their policies. This incident underscores the growing issue of deepfake content on social media, particularly as generative AI tools become more prevalent. Curtis has called for stronger safeguards against the misuse of AI-generated content, not only for celebrities but for everyone, highlighting the urgent need for structured content moderation and legal accountability. Her concerns resonate with other public figures, as celebrities like Tom Hanks and Scarlett Johansson have also expressed discontent over the unauthorized use of their likenesses. The rise of AI deepfakes has contributed to misinformation, as demonstrated by fabricated images related to natural disasters that have circulated online. Curtis celebrated the removal of the ad, exclaiming, "It worked! Yay, Internet! Shame has its value." In her communications, she emphasized that she did not authorize or endorse the ad, bringing attention to the broader implications of AI misuse. Curtis expressed distress over the lack of safeguards, likening the current situation to the wild, wild west of digital manipulation. Despite efforts from her legal team prior to her public appeal, she faced challenges in getting the content taken down, illustrating the difficulties public figures encounter in protecting their likenesses from unauthorized use. This has been your daily brief in tech. To read You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
Hey everybody, Dave here. I've talked about Delete Me before, and I'm still using it because it still works. It's been a few months now, and I'm just as impressed today as I was when I signed up. Delete Me keeps finding and removing my personal information from data broker sites, and they keep me updated with detailed reports, so I know exactly what's been taken down. I'm genuinely relieved knowing my privacy isn't something I have to worry about every day. The Delete Me team handles everything. It's the set it and forget it peace of mind. And it's not just for individuals. Delete Me also offers solutions for businesses, helping companies protect their employees' personal information and reduce exposure to social engineering. The NSA's Director of Cybersecurity hangs up their hat. Our guest is Chris Cleary, VP of Mantech's Global Cyber Practice, discussing the cyber battle space of the future. And Coinbase flips the script on an extortion attempt.
The problem is with the category of an attack or damage or destroy equipment. That is an attack. Everything shy of that can be stuff that we're not happy about, but it doesn't only say clauses with the intent to injure or kill personnel or damage or destroy equipment. That is an attack. Everything shy of that can be stuff that we're not happy about, but it doesn't only say quantify the intent to injure or kill personnel or damage or destroy. Academy, went to the Naval War College. When the military uses the word attack, it has a very, very specific definition. Definitionally, it's something that is with the intent to injure or kill personnel or damage or destroy equipment. That is an attack. It uses the word attack incorrectly. I'm a classically trained military officer, enlisted in the Navy, went to the Naval Academy, went to the Naval War College. When the military uses the word attack, it has a very, very specific definition. Definitionally, it's something that is with the intent to injure or kill personnel or damage or destroy equipment. That is an attack. Everything shy of that can be stuff that we're not happy about, but it doesn't only say quantify to the category of an attack. When we call every cyber incident an attack, then the ones that are really, really bad are called an attack, and the ones that are not so bad are called an attack. And they all begin to blend together, and they all begin to lose meaning. Because I would argue if we save the word attack for things that met a very specific definition, it would then call into question how we are going to respond to these things. So you doing a firewall scan, quote unquote, an event, somebody might call that an attack. Well, I would disagree. It wasn't done with the intent to damage or destroy equipment. Even if you steal something, well, that's a criminal activity. It might even be associated with espionage. But was it an attack? I would say no. Now, Sony, on the other hand, the North Koreans intentionally had the intentions to damage and destroy equipment that was arguably a U.S. company or some affiliates in the U.S. I know it's owned by a parent in Japan. But the point is, it was done with the intent to damage or destroy information. To me, that's an attack. By its definition, it's an attack. And we should have had a way to respond to that, and that we missed that opportunity, in my opinion, to respond in a way that we could have. The Department of Defense needs information technology to support those missions. Yes, we need computers to send email, and we need command and control systems to push data. But now this is also a domain in which we're going to conduct warfare. They are looking for means and methods to deliver effects in the domain that are not necessarily kinetic in nature. What makes this space really interesting in the near term, almost every major weapon system that we're acquiring right now is over budget, behind schedule, and suffers from major supply chain and workforce shortages. The ability to move over to the non-kinetic space, and when I say cyber, I'm really talking about electronic warfare, information operations, space, AI, machine learning, all of that is sort of, I'm just using cyber as sort of the blanket term, which is referencing all things fundamentally non-kinetic, which are relatively inexpensive to acquire compared to, let's say, a Ford-class aircraft carrier, relatively quick to market, and relatively unconstrained by range. And I think when you look at companies like Mantech that are trying to push this narrative, it's really about, hey, the way that we see, warfare today really lives in the world of the kinetic mind. Drones have been introduced into this space, autonomous systems that are cheaper, attritable, i.e. we don't care if we lose them, and easy to sort of maintain. That's the drone world. Well, outside of that, the next one is, leveraging non-kinetic effects to go after command and control systems and targeting systems and satellite systems and infrastructure that moves trains around or moves water around or keeps electricity flowing. All of those are target sets, and all of those can be engaged theoretically through the non-kinetic spectrum at a much reduced cost.
It's my perception that from the government's point of view, there is an intentionality in not drawing bright lines when it comes to cyber. And when you combine that with the private industry's desire to sell cyber to businesses and to the government, so it's in their best interest to make this seem as scary as possible, I think you get an interesting tension there.
So what you're sort of hinting at is another really hotly debated topic with inside, the cyber community. Should we have a cyber force?
Right.
Should cybercom and NSA be separated?
Right.
I have my opinions. A lot of them are predicated around things like force generation.
Mm-hmm.
Cybercom can have enhanced budget control, but cybercom can't force the Navy to produce more cyber warfare engineers.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one of the problems. That would be one of my arguments for a cyber service, but I'm only like 51% in favor of that. And it's all around force generation. I know all the other problems that would be caused by a cyber service. But to get back to the other point of your question, what's interesting about that is I had a general that I'm very, very fond of when we were having a conversation very similar like this. And I was, advocating for offensive cyber, and, he's bringing to the attention the vulnerabilities that we have. And he says, Chris, when you're covered in gasoline, you don't want to have a match fight. And I said, okay, I get that, but you're saying I am covered in gasoline. If I don't have a match, they won't have a match. So they're certainly going to throw a match at me because I'm covered in gasoline. So the point is, our vulnerabilities that we have in all of our systems, I think, are one of the reasons why we didn't necessarily want to poke the bear,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't want to necessarily have a cyber on cyber fight because maybe I have much more to lose, because our adversaries are, for the most part, unconstrained in the way they would think about targeting U.S., whether population or infrastructure or critical infrastructure. And we are more constrained, where we would only want to leverage, let's say, cyber capabilities to engage, let's say, military warfighting capacity of our adversaries. I think that's one of the things. And then you get into this idea of the difference between tools and weapons. Google and Microsoft are never going to get into the cyber weapons game, but they certainly provided an environment that is an attractive target to our adversaries.
Mm-hmm.
The Department of Defense runs on Windows. I mean, that's just a fact. Not every, and there's some weapon systems that run on Windows.
Sure.
Just a fact. Commercially provided, and our adversaries know that, and they work on means and methods to figure out how to deliver effects against that environment. For instance, infrastructure is a really good topic to talk about because, if I find an adversary in my water treatment plant, there's nothing there that's inherently an intelligence value to them. There's no piece of equipment in that plant that they couldn't go out and buy commercially. Hell, you could probably ask the company that made that plant to come into your country and build the exact same thing there.
Right.
So there's really no, all that stuff's publicly available.
Yeah.
So the only reason you're there is potentially want to impact the operations of that water treatment plant at a time and place of your choosing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are some cyber norms that were put out by, there's a group in Estonia that puts cyber norms, and infrastructure is one of these things they would consider a cyber norm, like thou shalt not engage critical infrastructure.
You're listening to the Cyberwire Network.
Oh, fucked it. I fucked it. I don't know where I was. Fucked it.
Australia regulators US FEIG securities for cybersecurity failures, Reuters. Reuters. March 13, Reuters, the Australian Securities Watchdog said on Thursday it is taking fixed Australia regulators US FEIG securities for cybersecurity failures, Reuters. March 13, Reuters, the Australian Securities Watchdog said on Thursday it is taking fixed income broker FEIG to court, alleging it failed to implement adequate cybersecurity. Cybersecurity measures over a 4-year. Australia regulator sues FIIG Securities for cybersecurity failures, Reuters. March 13, Reuters. The Australian Securities Watchdog said on Thursday it is taking fixed income broker FIIG to court, alleging it failed to implement adequate cybersecurity measures over a 4-year period, which enabled a hacker to infiltrate its IT network. The Australian Securities and Investments Commission ASIC claimed these deficiencies resulted in the theft of approximately 385 gigabytes of confidential data at the company. The Reuters Daily Briefing newsletter provides all the news you need to start your day. Sign up here. Around 18,000 clients were notified that their personal information may have been compromised. The Australian firm was the target of a cyber attack that lasted from May 19 to June 8, 2023. The breach affected its entire IT network and some of the stolen client data was later released on the dark web. ASIC alleged that between March 2019 and the 8th of June 2023, FIIG failed to take appropriate steps to make sure it had adequate cyber risk management systems in place. Advancing digital safety and resilience is a strategic priority for ASIC, and we have been actively engaging with companies to support the continuous improvement of cyber and operational resilience practices, said ASIC Chair Joe Longo. During the 4-year period that ASIC alleged FIIG failed to uphold its cybersecurity obligations, lender JP Morgan, JPM, opens new tab. Held assets on behalf of FIIG and its clients, valued between $2.89 billion Australian dollars, $1.83 billion and $3.7 billion Australian dollars. JP Morgan declined to comment to a Reuters request for comment, while FIIG did not respond. According to ASIC, FIIG's alleged deficiencies included a failure to adequately update and patch its software as well as insufficient resources to protect against and prevent cyber attacks. $1 equals 1.5815 Australian dollars. Reporting by John Biju and Nikikat Sunil in Bengaluru. Editing by Alan Barona. Barona. Our standards, the Thomson Reuters Trust Principles. Opens new tab. ASIC sues this company over alleged 4-year cybersecurity failures involving 385 gigabytes of data. The 13th of March 2025 T9 hours 29 minutes and 7 seconds. 572 plus 2 o'clock. Thursday, the 13th of March 2025 17:29 GMT plus 10 Bidemi and Schmiel. ASIC has filed federal court proceedings against FIIG Securities for alleged cybersecurity failures that led to a massive data breach. The regulator claims FIIG's inadequate security measures enabled hackers to steal sensitive client data that was later exposed on the dark web. Australia's corporate watchdog has launched federal court proceedings against fixed income specialist FIIG Securities Limited for allegedly maintaining inadequate cybersecurity systems over a 4-year period, resulting in a massive data breach that compromised sensitive information of approximately 18,000 clients. FIIG Securities faces federal court action after 385 gigabytes data breach. The Australian Securities and Investments Commission ASIC alleges that FIIG's cybersecurity failures, which persisted from March 2019 to June 2023, enabled hackers to infiltrate the firm's IT network and operate undetected for nearly 3 weeks before the breach was discovered. According to court documents, the breach resulted in the theft of approximately 385 gigabytes of confidential data, including highly sensitive client information such as names, addresses, birth dates, driver's licenses, passports, bank account details, and tax file numbers. Some of this information was subsequently released on the dark web. This matter should serve as a wake-up call to all companies on the dangers of neglecting your cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a blanket term that refers to the protection of computer systems and networks from the theft. More broadly speaking, cybersecurity can also represent countermeasures against damage to hardware, software, or electronic data, as well as from the disruption or misdirection of the services they provide. It was not long ago that the term cybersecurity not exist as it was first used in 1989. In today's vernacular, cybersecurity refers to measures taken to protect a computer or computer. Cybersecurity is a blanket term that refers to the protection of computer systems and networks from the theft. More broadly speaking, cybersecurity can also represent countermeasures against damage to hardware, software, or electronic data, as well as from the disruption or misdirection of the services they provide. It was not long ago that the term cybersecurity not exist as it was first used in 1989. In today's vernacular, cybersecurity refers to measures taken to protect a computer or computer systems, said ASIC Chair Joe Longo. Cybersecurity isn't a set and forget matter. All companies need to proactively and regularly check the adequacy of their cybersecurity measures. Delayed breach response under scrutiny. The regulator claims FIIG failed to respond promptly when initially notified of potential malicious activity. The company was reportedly contacted by the Australian Signals Directorate's Australian Cybersecurity Centre on June 2, 2023, but did not investigate and respond to the incident until June 8, almost a week later. ASIC's allegations detail multiple cybersecurity failures by FIIG, including improperly configured firewalls, failure to update and patch software for security vulnerabilities, lack of mandatory cybersecurity awareness training for staff, and inadequate resources devoted to cybersecurity management. Australian financial services licensees are required by law to have adequate cybersecurity risk management. Risk management, one of the most common terms utilised by brokers. Risk management refers to the practice of identifying potential risks in advance. Most commonly, this also involves the analysis of risk and the undertaking of precautionary steps to both mitigate and prevent for such risk. Such efforts are essential for brokers and venues in the finance industry, given the potential for fallout in the face of unforeseen events or crises. Given a more tightly regulated environment across nearly every asset class, one of the most common terms utilized by brokers. Risk management refers to the practice of identifying potential risks in advance. Most commonly, this also involves the analysis of risk and the undertaking of precautionary steps to both mitigate and prevent for such risk. Such efforts are essential for risk management refers to the practice of identifying potential risks in advance. Most commonly, this also involves the analysis of risk and the undertaking of precautionary steps to both mitigate and prevent for such risk. Such efforts are essential for brokers and venues in the finance industry, given the potential for fallout in the face of unforeseen events or crises. Given a more tightly regulated environment across nearly every asset class, read this term systems in place. Longo added. We allege FIIG's inadequate cybersecurity measures left the business and its confidential client information vulnerable and exposed to significant risk. FIIG Securities provides retail and wholesale investors with access to fixed income investments and bond financing, serving as a custodian for client investments and maintaining records of those investments. As an Australian Financial Services AFS licensee, the firm has legal obligations to ensure financial services are provided efficiently, honestly and fairly, and to maintain adequate risk management systems. Second, cybersecurity enforcement. The regulator is seeking declarations of contraventions, civil penalties, and compliance orders against FIIG. This case marks ASIC's second cybersecurity enforcement action, following a 2022 ruling against re-advice for similar breaches of license obligations. Cybersecurity failures have become an enforcement priority for ASIC, which has recently called for greater vigilance from Australian organisations following findings from its 2023 Cyber Pulse survey. The regulator has published various resources to help companies improve their cyber resilience and risk management practices. FIIG Securities has not yet issued a public response to the allegations. Australia's corporate watchdog has launched federal court proceedings against fixed income specialist FIIG Securities Limited for allegedly maintaining inadequate cybersecurity systems over a 4-year period, resulting in a massive data breach that compromised sensitive information of approximately 18,000 clients. FIIG Securities faces federal court action after 385 gigabytes data breach. The Australian Securities and Investments Commission ASIC alleges that FIIG's cybersecurity failures, which persisted from March 2019 to June 2023, enabled hackers to infiltrate the firm's IT network and operate undetected for nearly 3 weeks before the breach was discovered. According to court documents, the breach resulted in the theft of approximately 385 gigabytes of confidential data, including highly sensitive client information such as names, addresses, birth dates, driver's licenses, passports, bank account details, and tax file numbers. Some of this information was subsequently released on the dark web. This matter should serve as a wake-up call to all companies on the dangers of neglecting your cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a blanket term that refers to the protection of computer systems and networks from the theft. More broadly speaking, cybersecurity can also represent countermeasures against damage to hardware,
holiday coming up this Monday, the May bank holiday. But whilst the banks are on holiday, banking litigators never rest, do we, Kerry?
No, we definitely rest. I'm definitely having the bank holiday.
And let's not forget to introduce our guest speakers today, Ariel Weeb from the banking litigation team. Ariel and I have worked together on many a case, and I'm delighted to have her here today with us to take us through some very interesting cases. One on a recent decision of the, used to be called the ECJ, Kerry, but it's not called that now.
CJU.
Yes, exactly. Welcome, Ariel.
Thanks for having me.
Well, anyway, I'm going to start us off today with a topic which has received a lot of legal and indeed mainstream press attention over recent months, and those are, of course, the claims relating to the payment of broker commissions. And of course, the big news here is that the Supreme Court hearing in the Hopcraft motor finance case took place earlier this month. And the Supreme Court's judgment will be pivotal in determining lenders' potential liabilities for commission payments and the future course of claims in this area.
I recall that we covered the Court of Appeal's decision in our jolly festive edition of the podcast.
We certainly did. It was jolly, and it was covered in that edition, Ariel. That was episode 49, in case any podcasters are looking back through the back catalogue to find it. The 3 combined appeals. But fret not, I'm not going to start singing or ploughing or even sledging through it all again. I'm also not going to do any crystal ball gazing about the outcome of the Supreme Court, but we thought it might be quite helpful to give a quick update on a couple of recent cases which have considered issues very relevant to the Hopcraft litigation and this area for lenders.
Thanks, John. I cannot get over how many adverts there are about motor finance commission claims. I was trying to watch something on YouTube the other day, and those annoying pop-ups kept popping up. Now, most of those adverts relate to the FCA's potential redress scheme, but it is all linked to Hopcraft because the FCA has said that it will confirm within 6 weeks of the Supreme Court's decision as to whether or not it's going to implement a redress scheme.
If you want to avoid that, Kerry, there's a channel on YouTube called Told in Stone, which is lots of interesting historical epithets about the Roman Empire, and you don't get pop-ups about cars and that. You get lots about travel.
I almost exclusively watch High Rocks videos on YouTube, and for that you get a lot of pop-ups.
High Rocks, right, thank you. Well, I'll bear that in mind when I go high rock climbing. I will certainly bear that in mind. Now, in the Hopcraft appeals, going back to the subject at hand, the Court of Appeal found that the car dealers, with their broker hats on, owed a fiduciary duty to their customers. And that meant that they had to act in the best interest of the customer and could not lawfully receive a commission from the lender without first obtaining the customer's fully informed consent to the payment of the commission. Now, the Court of Appeal found that this consent had not been given, and therefore the lenders were liable either directly, because they paid a bribe, as the law sees it, or as an accessory to claim for breach of fiduciary duty against the broker. Now, the first recent decision I was going to touch on is Expert Tooling and Engie, as in E-N-G-I-E. And this one's important because it's another judgment from the Court of Appeal, albeit decided by a different bench, considering what needs to be proved by the claimant to make out an accessory liability claim in these cases.
John, do you think that the Court of Appeal was taking the opportunity to provide some clarification or even row back on a few points before the Supreme Court appeal hearing?
Quite possibly. In fact, I discussed that with one of our other podcast associates, Scott Warren, at exactly the time, thinking that it aligned with yours, Ariel. Expert tooling is not, of course, a financial services case, but the claims are analogous. The case involved an energy customer's claim against its energy supplier for paying commissions to a third-party broker, which were only partially disclosed to the customer. I suppose you'd call it a half-secret commission in old language. I know no one likes that. The key question was whether dishonesty was an essential building block for a claim for accessory liability, and the Court of Appeal held that it is. Now, in this case, there was no allegation of dishonesty against the energy supplier, and on that basis, the Court of Appeal upheld the High Court's decision to dismiss the claim.
From my recollection of the Court of Appeal's judgment in Hopcraft, which is very clear, that analysis sounds a little inconsistent.
Very interesting observation, Kerry, and the court in the present case did not disagree with you.
From the CISO series, it's cybersecurity headlines.
These are the cybersecurity headlines for Thursday, May 15th, 2025. I'm Rich Straffolino. Steel producer disrupted by cyber attack. Nucor Corporation, the largest steel producer in the U.S., disclosed in an 8K filing with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission that it suffered a cyber attack involving unauthorized third-party access to certain information technology systems. No other information on date, threat actor, or the type of attack was disclosed. The attack halted production at several locations, although the company began slowly restarting operations. No threat group has taken credit for the attack so far. European Vulnerability Database is online. The European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, or ENISA, announced in June 2024 that it would start work on the database as part of the EU's Network and Information Security 2 directive. A closed beta for the EUVD rolled out last month. Now, a full version is available online. Like the U.S. government's National Vulnerability Database, the EUVD will identify disclosed vulnerabilities. These vulnerabilities will carry standard CVE-assigned IDs as well as EUVD identifiers. It features dashboards for critical and actively exploited vulnerabilities. The EUVD claims near real-time updates sourced from open-source databases, vendor guidelines, and national advisories. CISA pauses advisory overhaul. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency announced on May 13th that it planned to stop publishing standard updates on its cybersecurity alerts and advisory site and would instead shift to publishing advisories and other updates through either email or social media. This would end the ability for professionals to subscribe to alerts through RSS. The agency framed the overhaul as a way to prioritize urgent alerts. However, following a flurry of feedback on May 14th, the agency said, "We have paused immediate changes while we reassess the best approach to sharing with our stakeholders." Australian Human Rights Commission leaks data. The AHRC is an independent statutory body created by the Australian government that receives complaints about human rights abuses. The organization announced that 670 documents were exposed online from April 3rd through May 5th, 2025, and indexed by search engines. These documents contain complaint web form content with private personal information, as well as submissions to the National Anti-Racism Framework paper. The AHRC said the incident did not represent a malicious external attack. It temporarily disabled all web forms to prevent subsequent issues due to a misconfiguration and requested the indexed search engines remove the content. And now, thanks to our episode sponsor, Vanta. Do you know the status of your compliance controls right now? Like, right now? We know that real-time visibility is critical for security, but when it comes to our GRC programs, we rely on point-in-time checks. But more than 9,000 companies have continuous visibility into their controls with Vanta. Advanced protection comes to end encrypted in the cloud to provide indelible logs that will survive even if a phone or a Google account is compromised. Google will also offer an API for third-party app integration with advanced protection. New picks for U.S. Cyber Command coming soon. Multiple military, civilian, and congressional sources told The Record that the Trump administration will name a candidate for the vacant role of National Security Agency Deputy Director before Memorial Day. U.S. Cyber Command and NSA head General Timothy Hoff and Deputy
ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music, and more.
Hi, it's PK here from the podcast Politics Now. And as the politicians hit the streets this election campaign, we'll help you navigate the spin.
Well, it just shows a lack of preparedness, I think. Being campaign fit means making sure your top people, your leader and your shadow treasurer,
Are saying the same stuff.
are on the same page.
And bring you the deeper analysis on what matters to you.
That's the implication, right?
Of
You're
course.
so right. It's about, like, are people just sitting at home on their butts, basically, not doing very much and getting paid a great...
ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music, and more. ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music, and more.
Nearly 2 years ago, Erin Patterson served beef Wellington to her family at that now infamous mushroom lunch, and her murder trial has finally begun. I'm Stephen Stockwell. Each day, we're racing straight from court to our Mushroom Case Daily studio to bring you all the evidence from the trial. We'll have a new podcast every evening the court is sitting. To make sure you don't miss new episodes, hit the follow button on the Mushroom Case Daily podcast. You can find it on the ABC Listen app.
This week, Donald Trump paused his massive tariff on Chinese goods entering the US for 90 days. and he reduced it from 145 to 30%. China reciprocated. So, is the US president's economic dream of bringing manufacturing back to America dead? Today, we chat with a US designer caught up in the tariff chaos about what it's been like, and to an economist to make sense of it all. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily.
I'm Cassie Abel. I'm the founder and CEO of Wild Rye. We're a women's outdoor apparel brand, and we're based in the state of Idaho.
Yeah, and you've had a pretty rough time, I would say, in the last little while because of Donald Trump's tariffs.
Yeah, to say the least. It's been the last month and a half has felt like 17 years.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike.
Donald Trump has promised his scattergun tariffs will see markets boom. But instead, Wall Street was flooded with red ink.
Another tumultuous day on the New York Stock Exchange.
Is it okay in the short term to have a recession?
Yeah, everything's okay. What we are, I said, this is a transition period. I think we're going to do fantastically.
Following weeks of turmoil on world financial markets, Donald Trump has agreed to lower the temperature in the trade hostilities between the US and China.
We're not looking to hurt China. China was being hurt very badly. They were closing up factories. They were having a lot of unrest. And they were very happy to be able to do something with us.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So before we move on to how you're actually faring, just tell me a little bit more about your business. When did you begin it and what was it all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So Wild Rye is a women's-specific technical apparel brand. We launched in 2016. I personally have worked in the outdoor industry for a really long time and just saw that most women's apparel was basically just men's apparel adapted for a woman and not adapted very well. So ended up launching Wild Rye to bring women a better option. And all of our working capital is a loan that's secured by my house. We started in 2016. We actually attempted production in the US and our product came back so flawed, so delayed that it almost sank our business before we even came to market.
Wow.
So I have scarring experiences.
So you design your clothing in the United States and originally you did try to manufacture it in the United States.
Yeah, the quality was low. The cost was really high. The communication with the manufacturers was really challenging. You know, in addition, most of our fabrics are highly technical, so we're importing them from overseas anyways. So the expense to ship high quality fabrics from overseas started to mount. Those were the primary ones, and it just didn't feel like it was a way to scale a business.
So in your mind, there was no way that you could have been a profitable business if you had continued to make the clothing in America. So you shifted to China.
Yeah, exactly. So after our first season, my now former business partner and I talked to many other outdoor industry professionals, and we ended up landing with some really amazing factory partners in China, and we've been with them pretty much ever since. And so we've built incredible relationships with the factory owners. They've come to our small office here in Idaho to meet, and we've gone over there. And yeah, I mean, these are really amazing human beings who are running these factories. This isn't like a distant enemy. These are real people with really high quality values and standards. So yeah, I mean, we've been in China ever since. They believed in us. They took bets on us when we were teeny tiny, and we've grown together.
And your business, what was really in a pretty good position right before Donald Trump introduced his tariffs.
Yeah, I mean, our sales are booming. We haven't raised any prices yet, so we haven't necessarily seen a massive decline in our consumer demand, but
our cost was unmanageable in the first month and a half since the reciprocal tariffs were put into place. So, yeah, I mean, we've spent the last month and a half scrambling. I spent a week in DC with the Outdoor Industry Association lobbying for exemptions and tariff reductions. Yeah, I mean, it was hard to see a path through the 145% tariff.
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess when he slapped that 145% tariff on China, you would have been really looking closely at your books. So what were the figures actually showing you? How much was this going to cost your business?
Well, perfect example, we have a purchase order that we placed back in December for roughly $700,000. We budgeted $200,000 for the tariffs because apparel already pays a really disproportionately high amount in tariffs. And we were looking at those tariffs increasing from $200,000 to $1.2 million. So more than the actual cost of the product.
Wow. So you could no longer make a profit on that product?
Not even close. Yeah.
Wow.
With all the uncertainty out there, it's been really hard to imagine making commitments because every other country that is known for technical apparel originally had roughly 50% tariffs put in place on April 2nd. So without knowing what's going to happen at the end of the 90-day pause, it's really hard to make adjustments. There's a lot of considerations, a lot of things to weigh. You know, it's like putting together a 5,000-piece puzzle with half the pieces missing. But the U.S. is not an option. We'd move to South America or Europe or elsewhere in Asia long before we'd move back to the U.S. for technical apparel.
And Cassie, at this point, what are you doing with the goods that have already been made in China? Are you leaving them there?
Well, the news on Monday is that the tariffs have been reduced for 90 days. So we're looking at 30% tariffs for the next 90-day window. So we had actually paused production on a lot of products. So now we're
going fast.
Yes, going the other direction and scrambling to get products made because they'll have to be on a boat within the next month in order for me to feel confident that they'd get through Customs and Border Patrol prior to the tariffs increasing because the shipping rates are going up. The capacity, on cargo ships is going down because every brand is rushing to move product right now. And so basically woke up on Monday morning to a whole new set of problems.
Oh my gosh, yes, doing business in America right now, it just sounds incredibly stressful. I mean, do you think there are a lot of business owners that will just say, this is now too hard?
I mean, I had that thought. Half jokingly, I love my brand. We have such an incredible team. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But I was talking to my husband and I was like, even if I decided I wanted to wind this down, if I decided this was too hard, I couldn't because our house is on the line for this. I'm sure there will be some attrition of brands in the next 6 months, but everyone has a unique set of problems and things that they're up against.
I'm Justin Wolfers. I'm a professor of economics and public policy at the University of Michigan.
Justin, what a whirlwind time for business in America and China. An understatement.
It's the only time in the world where people are excited to talk to economists.
That's very true as well, and a pretty confusing time for everyone else. Anyway, so Donald Trump, he slapped this 145% tariff on Chinese goods in early April. China, of course, responded with a 125% tariff, and that really did bring a lot of trade between the nations to a complete standstill, didn't it?
Absolutely. Sam, I'm going to be a stickler on language here because I think clear language leads to clear thinking. It's quite common to say that Trump put a tariff on Chinese goods, but it's only half right. Trump put a tax on Americans who imported Chinese goods. The moment you understand that, then you start to see who tariffs help and who tariffs hurt, and it helps you understand both the economics and the politics of this. A tariff, in this case, is a tax on Americans, and they would then pass it on to American consumers.
Yeah, okay. So the tariff on China, of course, has now been reduced to 30%, and China has dropped its to 10%. So just tell me, who do you think blinked here? Was it Trump or China? Donald Trump says he did it because China was suffering a lot.
I think it's entirely wrong to say who won, the US or China. The reason for that, when we think about economics and when we think about trade, we often think about competition. But it turns out that my field of economics is far more beautiful than that. Economics fundamentally is about cooperation. Really, the question is, if I get together with someone from China, I've got a bunch of tasks I need to do, they've got some tasks they need to do. Could we just reallocate those tasks so they do the tasks they're really good at and I do the tasks I'm really good at? And so between us, we end up producing more together than we would apart. So to turn this into international trade, America's got a great deal of very skilled software engineers. People who are really good at writing iPhone operating systems, for instance, or inventing new iPhones and patenting new iPhones and so on. China has got an enormous amount of factory labour and actually some very precise factories as well. And so basically, if Americans do what they do best, spend a lot of time designing phones, and the Chinese do what they do best, actually make the phones, people in America get very well put together phones at very reasonable prices, and people in China get access to cutting edge technology, and we're both better off. So both Chinese and Americans were being hurt by America's tariffs. Both Chinese and Americans were being hurt by China's tariffs. So if both of them blink, or if even either of them blinked, it actually makes people in both countries better off, and that's something to celebrate.
Yeah, but Donald Trump, he said he was doing all of this because he wanted to make America great again. He wants Americans to make things for Americans. Has he given up on that dream, has he? Is that just not actually possible? He can't actually reinvent manufacturing in the United States.
It could happen, but is it a good idea? So right now, the United States is very close to full employment. So basically everyone who wants a job has one. So that means if we want a bigger manufacturing sector, that means people have to move away from other jobs. So is it a good idea to move people away from writing software code for the next iPhone and move them across to the production line to screw screws into iPhones instead? My answer to that is no. The president has a different answer, but it turns out when you talk to people in factories, most folks in factories don't want their kids to work in factories. They want their kids to adopt all of the miracles of a modern economy, which is that we can work in white collars and not go home with aching bodies and sore fingers. In the US at the very least, rich people seem to think that what poor people want is to work in factories. What's difficult here is discussing this in the context of Trump. The reality is Trump doesn't understand the very simple basics of economics. The reason I want to put it in such stark terms is Trump does see the world as a competition, that the only way for him to win is for someone else to lose. He has a very fixed pie sense of the world. He misses these opportunities to grow the pie because he's so intent on bullying to get the bigger slice.
Well, this is, of course, a 90-day deal, if you like, the reduction in the tariffs. Do you think that Donald Trump would really go there again, though, that he would actually increase the tariffs to levels above 100%, given what we've seen?
Look, any sentence that begins with, can you predict what President Trump will do next? If it's answered honestly, has to be answered with no. No one can predict this at all. And just to give you a couple of highlights, could anyone have predicted that the first act of the Trump presidency would be to impose punitive tariffs on Canada, our nearest neighbour, closest ally, and who hates Canadians?
Exactly.
Or more recently, the president sort of woke up one day and suddenly tweeted that he wanted to put 100% tariff on movies. It's clear he hadn't spoken to any of his staff, he hadn't thought it through, he hadn't realised that would undermine the competitiveness of the American movie industry. So the point that you get out of that is that the tariff button is just there inside his phone and he seems willing to push it. The half-life of a Trump trade policy is around about 2 weeks. So we learned what happened in China, but what we haven't learned is how long that policy will stick around for.
Justin Wolfers is a professor of economics and public policy at the University of Michigan. Cassie Abel owns Wild Rye, a woman's clothing label designed in the US and manufactured in China. This episode was produced by Sydney Peed and Sam Dunn. Audio production by Adair Shepherd. Our supervising producer is David Cody. I'm Sam Hawley. ABC News Daily will be back again on Monday. Thanks for listening.
All right, that was my English one within English.
ABC Listen.
Stop it. It's hard to the lithium. That's what it is. The lithium is going out a lot out of Australia, and life is hard. And if you want to compare it or whatever it is, you might be able to have a better job where you are. So stay alive, be nice, be good. I love you. I'm Intimate Sector. Goodbye. Thank you for listening.